Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher, and this is Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear, and this week we are joined by Doyle Dykes.
Hey,
Thanks for
Mitch.
coming in.
Great to be here.
Such a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So you were here last night. You did a workshop and a webinar for the public here at Sweetwater, and this morning you were doing a little show for the sales engineers during the meeting and talking about your signature guitar, which I definitely want to spend some time talking about here today.
I enjoy talking guitars.
Well, we do too, so we're glad to have you here.
Great.
So you started playing at a very early age in Jacksonville, correct?
Jacksonville, Florida is my hometown. Yeah, I was raised going to church. I mean, our lives were sort of centered around that. My grandfather being the choir director, choir master, and my dad was in our little orchestra there. He played bass and then guitar. And then when I started playing, I started playing bass a little bit, and then I got into guitar kind of early on. I was 11 years old, and so Dad knew that, well, you can play rhythm, and we'd play at church. I learned to play in A flat and B flat and E flat and all those terrible keys, and because we had trumpets and everything at our church. And,
Sure.
So I learned to play in all those keys without capos and all that stuff, and mostly chunk rhythm and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then a sailor came to our church, and his name was Barry Lackey, because we had, Jacksonville is a naval city. There are a lot of bases around, and he came in and was finger picking, and so we invited him over for dinner, which is lunch.
Right.
So I had him all day, and he showed me things that I'd never forgotten. I learned how to do the finger picking, and I went from there. I already loved Chet and Merle, but I didn't understand how they did it. You couldn't see them play very much because just once in a while on TV.
Right, there was no YouTube or anything.
No.
Right.
Thank God for those things, because my son has learned so much on YouTube, and
Sure. So you went from there at a very early age. You were on the road with the Stamps Quartet, correct?
I was, J.D. Sumner and Stamps, and I used to be with a group in Jacksonville, Florida called the Crusaders, and I was working in studios. I did some local commercials, and once in a while we'd do a gospel record or country thing, and it was. I remember Buddy Killing came down one time, and we recorded with a guy named Glenn Reeves, and that was my first major attempt at a major recording. And anyway, I got to started learning how to play in the studio and playing behind groups. I learned a lot in the gospel bands. We'd have a bus, so we were semi-professional. So we'd leave, and sometimes they'd let me off the bus, and I'd go right into school.
Wow.
So I've been doing this a long time. And then when I graduated, I went to work with J.D. for a while.
And then toured with Grandpa Jones from the Grand Ole Opry, right?
Yeah, I married my high school sweetheart, so I wasn't with J.D. long. Rita, my wife, won out on that, so I moved back home. We got married, and about 2 years later, she actually said, "You need to be playing your guitar, and you're happier when you are." And so, a couple of weeks later, I interviewed with Grandpa Jones and got the job. And say interviewed, I mean, he says, "Can you sing harmony?" And I said, "Yes." "You know the old gospel songs, don't you?" I said, "Yes." "Well, I heard you pick kind of like Merle, Travis,
Right,
I
sure.
said, "Well, I do my best." "Well, get on up here and pick with us." And that was I got up there and played their show with them, and I sang harmony with them. And after it was over, he says, "Well, yeah, I guess you have the job." And so I really enjoyed my time, and through that I met so many great players. Of course, I met Billy Grammer, who I'd already really had met him years before. And he was the guy that actually recommended me with Grandpa.
Okay.
Billy was a great guitar player, had the Grammer Guitar Company for a while. And through that, too, meeting so many greats like Jimmy Capps on the Grand Ole Opry. Later, Jimmy recommended that I would be a soloist. So since 1995, I've been a soloist on the Grand Ole Opry on a regular basis.
Right, and also done a number of albums, solo albums. And
done a lot of records.
Toured the world and appeared a number of times on the Opry and elsewhere, and played with many great people. So what was the attraction that drew you to the music of Chet Atkins and that style of fingerstyle playing, and Merle Travis, the alternating thumb?
Well, my dad was a guitar player. And in fact, if you look inside my guitar, Mitch, you can see my dad's picture right there.
Yeah, nice.
And that way I can just look like this, and I can say, hey, Dad.
Right.
And
That's
he's
great.
playing a Stratocaster, in fact. But Dad was a great player, and we always had at our house, at any given time, any day, you would hear Les Paul, Merle Travis, Chet Atkins, or J.D. Sumner and the Stamps and the Statesman's Quartet and all that sort of the Blackwood Brothers. So I grew up around the gospel and the fingerstyle guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And later a guy named Dwayne Friend became a real hero of mine. Dwayne was with the Blackwood Brothers and the Goodman family, and he kind of let everybody know it was okay to play that kind of guitar in church.
Right.
And Goodbye World, Goodbye and all that, and I learned all that from him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a good friend with Chet's. But boy, you know, there was a lot of great music around our house all the time. I have to admit, Les Paul and Mary Ford were some of my favorites, you know, and I loved the happy music that they did. And then, of course, Merle Travis had this really thump sound that just really was like more in your face. And boy, what a passion he had when he played the guitar.
Right.
Chet had an elegance to his style.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a country gentleman, and it showed in his playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot of the things that I sort of went from, as he would sort of go into different things like the tremolo and the neoclassical sort of things that he would do. And then with the orchestration, I just fell in love with all that stuff. And so it was an inspiration to me.
Right.
Also, my brother was a big inspiration. He plays the keyboard, plays piano and organ and all that. I had an uncle that was a great B3 player.
Mm-hmm.
So like Jazz in the Box, some of the songs I've written in the past were really organ moves.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the other things are piano moves that I do. Not only the faster stride piano type things with the Chet Atkins, you know, bass lines and all, but some of the more like How Great Thou Art, that type of thing that I would play. That's it's not classical, but it's just more of an orchestration on the guitar.
Yeah, your playing definitely emphasizes three different things. There's the bass, there's the harmony, and there's the melody.
Yeah.
Did you work extensively to try and develop the separation between those, or how did you develop that facility?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed counteraction between the bass, when a bass line would go down and then you could hear the other guy sort of go up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like counterpoints. I learned that from listening to a lot of orchestration. The dynamics, a lot of that came from the piano.
Mm-hmm.
You know, listen to the piano player. When a piano player plays, well, How Great Thou Art, I mean, it's all or nothing. And
Sure.
they have 88 keys. In fact, it's funny that one time my brother says, how can you get up in front of all those people with only 6 notes at any given time? And I said, well, why are you saying that to me? And he said, well, you know, we used to have these polyphonic keyboards, he said, and if you went over a certain amount of notes, it would cut off.
Mm-hmm.
He says, but you don't have any more than 6 notes. How can you get up in front of all those people? He said it again. I said, well, you only have one of these, and I'd hit a middle C, and then I'd hit all the middle C's that we have on the guitar.
Right.
And he said, oh, wow, you know, they're just different, you know.
Yeah.
Let's go eat.
Right.
Kind of one of those things. So you can't totally say, you know, I play the guitar like a piano, because they are totally different instruments. But what a piano player does do, they have 88 keys, and he says, man, I have access to any of those notes, and I can sustain them with a pedal,
Mm-hmm.
and at any given time, and so that's why they play that way.
Right.
So I learned a few ways to be able to do that, even with the 6 strings.
Right, and that does actually point out something that is a hallmark of your style, and that's that you managed to keep the melody very legato and very smooth and connected, whereas a lot of fingerstyle players, in trying to keep all the parts going at once, don't have that. The melody will break, or there'll be little gaps and things. Do you purposefully compose or arrange so that you have the melody laid out so it will be that way and then fit the other parts around it, or how do you approach that?
No, I absolutely do that. In fact, I think that's one of the things I learned from Chet. Chet said, you know, I'm a sucker for a melody. Mm-hmm. And the song has to have a melody to it. I never went over on the dark side too much of things. You know, I've always kind of stuck with that. And I would play chords around it, even on the things that I wrote, like... The backup is a little quieter, softer than the lead guy. And I do that on purpose, because he's the lead singer and you're playing like a piano kind of a thing.
Right.
You don't want to touch him either. still
let that
there,
ring,
you know.
yeah.
And so that's something you feel. And I found out when you let things kind of run together that way too, musically, you know, it's soothing to you. And fullness, there's a thing of fullness. Even the Bible talks about fullness. And so when you're playing something, you want to sound as full as you can. And doing alternate tunings and things like that help to do that with just exactly what you said. Helps to support that lead guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Does the tuning define what you play, or do you match the tuning to what you're trying to achieve?
Both. I mean, there are times like with White Rose for Heidi, Steve Warner years ago. Steve's been my friend since the 70s, and what a phenomenal singer he is, but he's one of the best guitar players I know.
Absolutely.
And so he showed me this this tuning years ago, and I thought it was such a beautiful sound. And he had a song. I saw a lady on the way to California. And he had a hit song called I Should Be With You. And I was playing it one day, and I thought, boy, what a beautiful tuning. I mean, it just, you can do so much with that. And I just started playing around it, and you can't normally go down to a D. You'd have you can do that 4/5 under that.
Right.
And so I wrote that song around the tuning. And things like the Lord's Prayer, I let the tuning be able to support the lead notes there, and it works really well because you have a low C. The C is your bottom note. That really, and of course you tune this to a G, so you have your fifth, and that really brings a fullness in. And a song like that has to be that way. Has to be full. You don't want to end your bottom note to be a third if you're playing in D, and a lot of times you'll hit an F sharp. You know, that's not good if you're playing solo guitar as much. If you have a bass underneath you, a bass player, then you can get by with things.
Sure, because they'll play the root underneath, right? So the tuning you're using here is C, G, D, G, B, D.
Yes,
correct?
and actually G chord with a C.
Okay. So one of the things when you're working with those low tunings, as low as C or even lower, is you have to have a guitar that supports that. Not all of them do. Some of them get mushy on the bottom. They get too boomy. It's not a tight sound. Now this guitar that you're playing is a new guitar. It's a Guild Doyle Dykes signature, correct?
In fact, it is, and I'm very proud of this. It has a beautiful maple. I mean, I think they should have put the strings on this side. I mean, that's just so pretty.
It is a gorgeous, gorgeous back.
And taking the idea from some of the old jazz guitars, like a L5, I played a Gibson L5 when I was a teenager. I always loved the sound of that, but I thought, why wouldn't that work in an acoustic guitar? And we found that it doesn't get too boomy, just like what you said about, you know, and this guitar will be available also, already is available in rosewood.
Okay.
But especially for a stage instrument, I don't like for it to be too boomy. You have feedback issues and that sort of thing, so the maple works really nice. It's more linear. However, you do have a nice warm bass, and all the way to the trebs, it just has a really great sound. And when you really get down on the thing, it can take anything you give it and more.
Right.
And I say it has moxie, you know. So that's actually the characteristics of maple. It's very fast to respond too. We made this guitar a bit shallower than the F47, which is based off of because of the 16-inch body, and so we made it a little bit more narrow this way, and it has a quicker response too. So the maple's quicker. It's shallower, so it's quicker to respond because the sound bounces off the back and goes out the front. And then, of course, the Adirondack top and bracing makes a huge difference. This is something I only saw in the last few years. I didn't know it made that much of a difference, but even if it was a Sitka top, the Adirondack bracing adds a clarity to it that's a little bit different. It's the density of it. It's very, very strong to be so light.
Right.
And it really works great. We found that Guild has been doing this since the 60s. So to be with a company that has such a heritage and a past, is really refreshing to me.
Right.
This guitar has a lacquer finish, and it has the dovetail joint, so it gets a different sound. It gets that warm sound that I was used to when I was growing up, and I really love that with fingerstyle guitar. We shortened the neck to 25 1/4 from 25 1/2. So just that little bit really helps you with these bar chords and that sort of
A
thing.
little different tension, right.
And the 1 3/4 here, which is perfect for a fingerstyle guitar. It has an LB6, which has been tried and proven. They told me that they'd make as many pickups as I wanted. I mean, I don't even want to say how many they made for my friend Eric Johnson, and also Eddie Van Halen. And but Eric is one of the best musicians I know, and he can hear things that I just couldn't hear. But I already knew what I wanted, and I said, no, that's fine. He said, well, no, really, if you don't like this one. I said, no, that's what I want. I've been actually wanting to do this for a long time. The LB6, Paul McCartney, James Taylor, Phil Keaggy, some of the Dave Matthews, some of the greatest players in the world have used these in their stadium gigs, and they just work.
Right.
LR Baggs, LB6, and it's paired here with the Element Stage Pro, which essentially is what you get on their floor model venue system, which is a pro gear for going into the house. Well, it's built on. He says the same components are in this guitar.
Right.
It's easy to change the battery, just pushing this, and it just lifts right out. A few of the other things, it's not only aesthetically. When I'm holding a guitar, the strap pin is here, and it just allows me to see just like I'm sitting right here with you right now, when I'm standing up. And I can see these position markers in any kind of light. They're the Chet type markers, and of course I knew Chet, and I asked Chet if I could put these on my guitars. I said, I'm not copying you, I'm honoring you. But at the same time, they work, and he knew they did. And of course he bought it, and I never had a problem. They're rectangles, so it won't look just like a Gretsch, because that's part of the FMIC family as well.
Sure.
But we put the rectangles, and a friend of mine, Kirk Sand, who's a great luthier out in California, came up with the idea to put the little triangle with the abalone. It makes it real.
That's beautiful.
Guild-esque.
Yeah.
We also, I went with the higher end Godot keys, which are wonderful. They actually space these keys apart, because when I do some of my songs that I do, I actually like the Wabash Cannonball.
Right.
And it's fun, but you can't do that on some of the gills because they're too close together.
Right,
so
can't get 2 fingers in there.
They actually redesigned the headstock and retooled everything just for this guitar, which I was really flattered that they would do that.
Right.
The other thing, this has a Dwayne Eddy G on it, because Dwayne's just a dear friend. I love him. He's one of my favorite people in the world. This was like the old G from the 60s, from his Dwayne Eddy model, the D500 model.
Right.
And we were playing that. He was playing that guitar. The first time I ever met him was on the Grand Ole Opry. And the manager of the Opry called me, and he says, Doyle, I want you to do me a favor. I'd like for you to be on the Opry with on all what do you call it, Guitar Man Night. It was Bob Whitaker at the time. He was the Opry manager. And he said, I already have Chet Atkins and Dwayne Eddy, and I want you to be on there. I said, I'm doing you a favor? And so I was, talk about a hero sandwich, man. I was sandwiched in between 2 of my favorite guitar players of all time. And he had his old guild. It was so cool.
Nice.
And then it got what we thought really destroyed in the flood 3 years ago. And I was the first time I went to the guild factory, I said, it's such a shame that guitar was destroyed. And they said, we have it. Went to the next room, brought the Dwayne Eddy, his original guitar, all completely restored. I said, has Dwayne seen this? And they said, no. I said, take a picture of me real quick.
Right.
And I sent it to him on my phone, and Deed, his wife, called me immediately. She said, where are you? And I told her, New Hartford. They didn't realize that they had sent it up there. and she showed it to Wayne, and he just cried.
Oh my gosh, what a great story.
Guitars really mean so much to him. And it had such a nice patina and a shade to it. I said, you know, I want my guitar to look like his.
Right.
And so that has a lot to do with that. So the Dwayne Eddie G, even the color, and also a Kirk Sand guitar I had this shade on the top. And so we really, you know, I embellish things that I like, and then I see other people and their expertise, and that's what we like to try to bring these things together.
Right. It's a beautiful guitar, and it sounds wonderful.
Well,
it's really a
thanks.
rich sounding guitar, and it projects well acoustically. You're playing it through effects and through amps. It sounds great. So congratulations.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm enjoying. We also did ebony here on the fingerboard and also on the bridge. So yeah, it makes a very complete guitar and
beautifully
perfect for
appointed.
stage. Don't have to think about a thing. Just
That's
play
wonderful. That's the way it should be, right?
it. Yes.
That's right. Well, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Mitch.
Really
It's a
appreciated
pleasure.
the time with you. Thanks for hanging around and doing this interview. We're really proud to have you here.
Oh, it's fun. Love
Thank
you
you.
guys. Appreciate Sweetwater.
Thanks so much. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Be sure to tune in next time for Guitars and Gear. We'll have more guitars, amps, effects, and we'll be making lots of music.